So guys, it's that time of the week again. Welcome back to another episode from the Fantasy Kickabout and to our Wildcard Wednesday segment for FPL Managers out there. Welcome back, guys. Gary Quinn here again as your host, currently sitting in 29,000th position within the overall FPL rankings. And this week we are joined by John McNevin. John's current rank is 140k. He also had a very, very impressive finish of 6.2k back in the 2019-2020 season. John, you're very welcome to the Fantasy Kickabout Wildcard Wednesday podcast.
Thanks very much, Gary. Pleasure to be here.
So what we're just going to do is going to briefly go through what Wildcard Wednesday is about. For any of our listeners who've obviously heard about it before, but if anyone is new to listen to the content, Wildcard Wednesday is where FPL managers have 82 million to spend on the upcoming game week, and they have to act as if they're using their wildcard, so they can pick obviously a brand new team from scratch. Same rules apply where you can only pick 3 players from each team. And the reason we say 82 million is obviously you have a bench in place. So we valued four subs at 4.5 million, which leaves you with 82 million in the bank. Just going back to last week, obviously it was myself against Niall Crossan from FPL Era. Niall finished on a score of 59 and I finished on a score of 52. So Raul Jimenez's goal was the difference between the two of us. So I don't know if you listened in last week, John, but we had a couple of nice differentials in place. But hopefully maybe this week we might have 2 very different teams. If you'd like to take us through your Wildcard Wednesday team.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm going to start with goalkeeper and go from there. And just in this team, I've been actually quite loyal to some of the players I actually own in my own team. And the first one of them is going to be Sa. So people are going to be saying, "Oh, you're just putting him in there because he got 14 points last week." But I actually had him last week, and we don't see goalkeeper assists all that often. But it happened last week. He hit that ball forward to Jimenez, who I also had in my team. So I was delighted with myself. But I suppose with the £5 million goalkeepers, people kind of have very strong opinions about 4.5 setting for Gesh. Obviously Sanchez at Brighton's very, very popular. I actually wildcarded Sa in 3 weeks ago, and I suppose it was with Wolves' nice set of fixtures, and the fixtures continue to be good for, I think it's another maybe 8 or 9 weeks, so it's good to get him in. You can always maybe downgrade down to a 4.5 then maybe when the fixtures change. I know people are quite against transfers for goalkeepers. They don't see it as being a very good idea, but I'm not opposed to spending 5 million on a goalkeeper. I even think that if you wanted to spend 6 million on someone like Ederson, especially with the way City's defence looks, I think it's not a bad idea, especially now that we're kind of getting to the stage in the season where we're finding the value maybe in midfield. I mean, we might have a little bit more to spend, but yeah, Sa has Newcastle coming up. Newcastle aren't going great. So he's my goalkeeper. And then into the defence, I suppose this is going to be very popular, but I've gone double Chelsea defence. So I've gone Azpilicueta. So with Reece James looking to be out until after the international break, he's 6 million, but he can play obviously right wing back or right centre back. He's as nailed on as they come in that Chelsea defence. So he's in there. And then Alonso, listen, if anyone's been watching football for the last 5 or 6 weeks, if we all knew Alonso was going to be playing every single game at that left wing back, we're saying left wing back, but he's been terrifying as someone who doesn't own him. He's been playing left wing / centre forward for most of the games, and as a non-owner, it is terrifying. But I think he'll be a huge choice if people are wildcarding this week and next week with Chelsea's upcoming great run of fixtures. So he's in there too. And then I've gone for Tierney as well. He's my third defender. He's 4.9 million. I think he's quite a good price. He's in my own team. I wildcarded him in with Arsenal's good run in fixtures coming up. I suppose it was probably a brave choice to wildcard him in game week 4, especially after how Arsenal started. But he's got that attacking threat, and Arsenal, they look like a different team now. And like, they were very defensively good last season. I think they were the third best defense in the league last season. So like, I think he's a great shout, 4.9. So he's in there too. On to my midfield. I will just say about midfield, I think the value is really starting to show. There's a lot of really good value assets. I would have picked Rafinha, and he is in my own team, but he's just he has a little injury concern. So I said, just for the purpose of Wildcard Wednesday, I wouldn't put him in. But I have picked someone who he's playing, who's Sarr. Also, listen, he's got 3 goals in the last 2 games. Have him in my own team. He's very, very good. 90 minutes. There's no concern with him playing, anything under that. He plays every minute. He could be on penalties also. Watford haven't been given a penalty yet, but there's rumours that he could be their penalty taker. So if that's the case for 6.3 million, you can't really go wrong. I will just say, after this Leeds game, his fixtures kind of take a bit of a turn. So I suppose if people haven't got him in yet, you might not want to get him in, but I have him in anyways for the game against Leeds. Leeds at home are probably a bit better. So it's an away fixture for Sarr, but hopefully he can get something. The next person, and another absolute budget bargain in my opinion, is Gallagher, who's playing centre attack and mid. I don't know if anyone saw the match last night against Brighton. He was every single place on that pitch. He won the penalty. I've been really impressed with him. The bits I've seen in Palace so far. I think he's 5.7 million. And for that price, you can't go wrong. He's playing Leicester, who haven't looked great defensively. So he's in there too. And if anyone's looking for, I suppose, a player around that 5.5 to 6 million mark, I think he's honestly the best one. Maybe not the best, but one of the best. Another one who you could pick, who we're moving on to now, is Mbeumo. We've all been really surprised with how Brentford have done this season. And Mbeumo, he's scored once, but I think he's been unlucky. He's playing up there with Tony, a real live wire. I think he's hit the post like 3 or 4 times as well. He's been unlucky not to get more returns. And you're talking about a 5.5 million midfielder who's pretty much playing as a striker up there with Tony. So I think he's a great shout. So he's in there too. And then I've put in Dwight McNeil. Like, this is a bit of an outside shot. We're not too sure about Burnley so far this season, but the reason he's in is because we're playing Norwich. And if anything has taught us so far this season is to target Norwich fixtures for them goals, And I think, as far as I can remember, the last time McNeil played Norwich, he got like 14 points, because I think I had him in my team 2 years ago. So I remember it fondly. So maybe it's a bit of a throwback to then. But he's in there too, and he's 5.9 million. So I probably wouldn't be wildcarding him in long term, but for this week with Norwich there, it's good to have him in there. So like, I've just gone through 4 very, I suppose, modestly priced midfielders there, and the reason for that is because I've gone pretty heavy up top. I put in Ronaldo. He's 5.7 million. I know people are very frustrated after the Villa game, but I reckon he'll bounce back against Everton. There's not much more to say. I think anyone who watches football knows enough about what he can do. So he's in there too. Vardy's in there also. I think Vardy has been so overlooked this season. It's probably his price point. He's 10.5 million. At the start of the season, people were probably saying that's too much for him. And then I suppose when Lukaku and Ronaldo signed, it was just like, no, there's no way we can, I suppose, put Vardy in there when the alternatives of Lukaku and Ronaldo are there. But, he's been scoring for fun. People talk about Ronaldo and how, at 35, 36, at marveling at what he's doing, but we could say the same for Vardy, at his age. And he's guaranteed to start. He's on penalties. He's playing Palace. And I think he's definitely worth a shout. So I've put him in there. I think he's around 10.5. And yeah, I'm really happy to have him. And then I suppose the last player I have, he's going to be in most people's teams, especially on Wildcard, and it's Lukaku. And he's also going to be my captain. Southampton look to have improved defensively. I'm wearing the jersey, so I actually spent some time in Southampton a few years ago. So I'm a big fan of them and their club. But you'd expect a response from Chelsea after that kind of miserable enough showing against City. So I think he'll be probably the highest captain this week. I think the Ronaldo, I suppose, against Villa last week will put people off Ronaldo, but I think Ronaldo is a fine captain this week too. So if it was to go to captaincy, I think people are going to be between Lukaku or Ronaldo. It'll probably be whichever person they own, because obviously the City game will turn off Salah captainers. So it'll be a nice mix of captaincies this week's on the premiums. And that ties off my team. So yeah.
Very good, John. I have to say that is a proper kind of differential wildcard Wednesday sort of team, which is exactly kind of what we want to see and give our viewers and listeners some kind of, I suppose, unique ideas or something very different in terms of their approach to game week 7. So like we always do, we have to ask the most important question. Who are you captaining this week on your Wildcard Wednesday team?
So on my Wildcard Wednesday team, I'm going to captain Lukaku against Southampton.
Okay, I am jotting that down for future reference. Some very interesting picks. Like I said about the midfield, you've a lot of players that are very good value at the moment, coming up with big returns. I love the way you just went all out up top. Just looking for goals this weekend, obviously to give you the edge over my team. Also, John, I gonna say your team came to the value of 79.7 million. So again, good man, sticking to the rules under the 82 million. And also we do have to give you a shout out to winning our September Manager of the Month as well in the Fantasy Kickabout League. So no better person to have on the fantasy segment of the podcast this week. So congratulations on that as well.
Yeah, thanks very much. It was a good week to come on. I'll have to just say a special mention to Sa with the goalkeeper assist, because it doesn't happen too often. It's one of those special moments, I suppose. If you're playing FPL for a while, if your goalkeeper gets an assist, it doesn't happen. So it was a good week to get it. It kind of just pipped a couple of people at the last. I kind of came out of nowhere. So apologies for anyone who was kind of fairly sure they were getting it, because I didn't have any expectation of winning it this month. So thanks very much.
Yeah, and obviously you make a very interesting point about the Wolves goalkeeper, because obviously in the week before he scored 0. And you could imagine, again, a lot of managers being very kind of hot-headed and getting rid of him straight away because he scored 0. But it shows sometimes if you stick and a bit of patience with an FPL asset, they come back with a big return, like 14 points, like Sa did last weekend.
Yeah, it is. I think it's quite an interesting topic, and I'm not trying not to go down a rabbit hole here, but I suppose when you do a wild card or when you bring in a certain player, and it doesn't go well for a week or two, just I suppose remember why you made that decision, and you probably made it for the right reasons, and try not to knee jerk out of it, especially if you spent maybe a lot of money on a player and you've high expectations. Just, I suppose, having a little bit of patience. You put him in for a reason, probably because he had a good run of fixtures. Let those fixtures kind of run out. Not run out, but maybe don't make a knee-jerk decision after a week or two. We can all get very emotional when it comes to FPL, but I suppose it's about being that right level of being patient. And let's see how it plays out over maybe 4 or 5 game weeks as opposed to 1 or 2.
I I will just go through my team really quickly. So obviously I'll start between the sticks, but also I'll start with one of my defenders. So 2 Chelsea assets. I'm going for Mendy in goal and Rudiger at the back. Both, obviously, as you said, John, up against Southampton at home. You'd expect kind of big returns in Chelsea to bounce back to a bit of form after the disappointment last week against City. For me, obviously, Rudiger is probably the most guaranteed starter for Chelsea in defence. Obviously, like you said, Azpilicueta, based on Reece James's injury on the weekend. So they're probably the 2, and probably as well Alonso at this stage based on his form. But Rudiger, for me, that's one of the main reasons I've gone with him at the back. Where my defence differs a little bit is, as you said as well, John, kind of targeting those Norwich fixtures, and I've gone for Tarkowski at the back for Burnley at 5 million. Burnley, they don't really concede too many goals. I know that I don't think they've won a game this season, but as I say that they did concede 2 goals last weekend to Jamie Vardy. But normally they tend to not concede too many goals, especially at home. So against a poor Norwich side who haven't scored too many goals themselves, you'd expect a clean sheet there from Burnley. My third defender is Semedo at Wolves. I think I might have went with him last week. He just had, I remember in one of the games, I think he had 3 or 4 big chances, and he was a proper wing back, almost like a right winger, Cancelo type of player, more advanced. So I can see him kind of again pushing forward. Wolves are on the back of a big victory with obviously Raul Jimenez getting the winner. So I can see him definitely potentially getting an attack in return, but obviously a clean sheet as well against Newcastle at home. Ironically, my 3 defenders and goalkeeper all have home fixtures. So it's a common theme, I think, throughout my team this week. So in midfield, I'm going to just touch on the same asset as yourself that I went with. I went with Sarr at 6.3. He was in my team last week as well, came up with returns. He's in my actual team as well, put him in with my free transfer. He's the main attacking asset for that Watford team. They're obviously against Leeds away. So I've gone with actually taking a bit of a gamble with Rafinha at 6.5. I know he's a doubt. He's been a doubt for the last 2 game weeks, I think, but he's come through and he's pulled off some big returns as well. I think it's 3 goals in 6 games for Rafinha. Again, I can see that Watford Leeds game being quite open. I think any game associated with Leeds, you can usually predict goals. So potentially I'd be hoping for maybe a 2-2 draw with both Rafinha and Sarr coming up with returns. I've gone back to I'm going to say Mr. Reliable from the first couple of game weeks in Benrahma against Brentford. I just have a feeling that it's against his former club. He kind of would want to prove that he made the step up to the Premier League to go to West Ham, another London club. And he might want to, not in a negative way, but he'd want to kind of put down a marker and say, yeah, I always knew I was good enough to leave Brentford and come to a bigger club. So I feel he has something to prove against Brentford at home. So I've gone with Benrahma at 6.6 in the midfield. And I suppose this probably is a bit of gamble. I know we were messaging each other earlier with our teams, and I said I had Salah in it originally. And then I've decided to go with Bruno Fernandes at 11.9. He loves a goal against Everton. That's pretty much the reason. And I was also looking through Mo Salah's stats, and he does love a goal against City. I think he's got 4 against them in the Premier League. I think it's 6 in all competitions. Maybe it's the bias of supporting Manchester United, hoping to bounce back again, and just keeping the faith with Bruno Fernandes. So I've gone with him at 11.9. Obviously he's dropped in value with the income of Ronaldo into the game. So up top, Lukaku as well. So nothing really to add to what you've explained earlier, John. Southampton at home, you'd expect him to bounce back because he hasn't scored in, I think, the last 2 games for Lukaku. and expect Chelsea to come up with some big opportunities as well.
Yeah.
Again, I've gone back to another guy, Mr. Reliable Antonio, who's probably been FPL player of the season so far. At home to Brentford, I think he'd just want to keep his score and run going at the moment. Again, 7.9, he's obviously increased in value over the game weeks, but if Brentford kind of, will say, put in a performance similar to what they did against Liverpool, you can see a very open game, and again, potentially a lot of goals. So Antonio. And I suppose my main differential in this team is I've gone with Chris Wood, Burnley up top, again targeting that Norwich fixture. He's their main goal threat, apart from McNeil, as you went with him as well. And I think we were saying during the couple of messages we were sending each other, we actually have a very different team compared to previous weeks where there was 5 or 6 players that were quite similar on both teams. So it'll be interesting to see how the game week goes. But Chris Wood, probably my main differential, and I've taken a big gamble, and I've putting the captain's armband on Chris Wood for my Wildcard Wednesday.
Wow.
Let's see how that pays off. Wasn't it last season he came up with, was it 4 goals in one game?
Yes.
So potentially could do something similar against a poor Norwich side. So we'll wait and see. My team comes to 79.3 million. So again, just kept under the 80 million, but obviously we had 82 million to mess around with. So John, as we always do, I'm going to ask you for your points prediction of your Wildcard Wednesday team. So what do you think your team will accumulate in game week 7?
I'm going to be confident, seeing as like I got a high score last week when I suppose maybe others didn't. I'm going to say maybe about 75 points. There's good fixtures in there. And I suppose with the 3 big guys up top, I'd be confident enough. So I'll say 75.
That's a good shout, and it's coming from a confident man on the back of scoring 80 points in a very low score in game week 6 last week. So I definitely love to have your confidence going into to game week 7. I was kind of looking at mine earlier, thinking I'd be delighted to pick up obviously a lot of gambles, a lot of differentials in my team. I'd be delighted to pick up 70 points. So I've gone with the 70 points. So we'll see how that pans out over the weekend. What we normally do, John, here is just a couple of questions that would have come in on our Instagram page. Not necessarily about game week 7, but it can be about FPL questions in general. So we've 3 to put to you, if that's okay.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
So the first question is, what Chelsea players are you considering for their run of fixtures that are coming up? So obviously you mentioned a couple of them in your Wildcard Wednesday, but we'll chat more about your team specifically.
Yeah, well, I suppose I wildcarded Lukaku in 3 weeks ago. I went for him instead of Ronaldo. I'm still happy to do that. I know a lot of people are looking at going from Ronaldo to Lukaku. I think you have to stick with Lukaku has to be there. Some people have mentioned like Kovacic is very cheap, 5.2 million or something similar. Mount was mentioned a little bit, although he's kind of out of favour, it looks at the minute. I wouldn't go near midfield because it's just the value doesn't seem to be there. Like, I think if people are going to triple up on Chelsea, it has to be 2 defence and Lukaku. And that's kind of the only option. You could do 1 defence and 1 Lukaku and just go single Chelsea. But with their run of fixtures, you have to really just try and capitalise on that. So the big argument is Alonso going to keep starting? Like, where's Chilwell been? But he has played every single game so far this season. So maybe are we second guessing ourselves, saying, "Oh, well, Chilwell's going to start at some stage"? How long are we going to hold off? And as I discussed, where he's playing, the positions he's picking up, he's playing nearly like a second striker. You know, he's so far forward. And we all know he's on free kicks. He has an eye for a goal, eye for a pass. Like, you know, he's just such good value at 5.9 million as long as he keeps playing. So I don't have him in my team yet, but he's definitely going to go in very, very shortly. And then I suppose the option then could be, do you want to go for that second, maybe attacking player, maybe bring in Reece James in 3 or 4 weeks' time if you're not on wildcard? He seems to be nailed for right wing back, but like he's been unfortunate. I think his house got robbed. I think his Champions League medals got robbed. He obviously got that straight red card. So he's had a kind of an unfortunate start to the season, and now he's injured, you know. So I think he's a great shout, but obviously not right now. So then your other kind of nails, the two most nailed guys would be Azpilicueta and Rudiger. I think Rudiger is probably the more popular because he started every single game, but Azpilicueta is 6 million and he's going to be playing right wing back for the next couple of weeks until Reece James is back. So I don't think he's a bad shout either. So if it was me, I'd go for Alonso and then one of either Rudiger or Azpilicueta along with Lukaku. That is what I would do if I was on wildcard. One kind of exciting pick and one nailed on. So you can rest assured that one will definitely start.
So speaking of Lukaku there, one of the next questions is Ronaldo or Lukaku or Salah or all three?
Oh, so it seemed to be 2 or 3 weeks ago, everyone was saying, oh, how do we cram the three premiums in? How do we get them all in? I think it is still possible, and it's like we said, we've discussed the possibility of, like, you know, the other cheaper value picks in midfields, the likes of Gallagher and Bueno, Sarr, Rafinha, you know, all of them under 6.5 million providing really good value. It could be a possibility that you could get to 3 in, but I think with, I suppose, the emergence of people wanting to go doubles Chelsea defence, maybe try and get Diaz or Cancelo in there too. Do we keep Trent or not? All of a sudden, people are trying to maybe put the money into defence. So I think that 2 premiums is the way to go going forward. If you think of what premiums are and what they're really for, you're going to want to captain one or the other every single week. If you look at Ronaldo's set of fixtures, people are saying, is he fixture proof? I suppose last week against Villa showed you that he's not fixture proof. Fixtures do matter. For me, I would go Lukaku and Salah, because if you look at their fixtures, Lukaku you can captain in any of the next maybe 5-6 game weeks, and then after that, Liverpool's fixtures turn again. So when you're paying 12 plus, you know, around the 12 million, 11.5, 12 million mark for a player, you want them to be a captaincy option. If you've got the 3 of them, you can only captain one. And that's important to remember. So those other 2 £12 million assets, you know, they're there, but you're not captaining them. You're not doubling their value for any returns. So for me, I just think the price point of having 2 premiums is nice. I would do Salah and one of either Ronaldo or Lukaku, but personally, it's going to be Lukaku for me.
Yeah, I think Mo Salah is a must in fantasy football, and I think it always comes back to what Niall Crossan said on one of our first podcasts of the season. If in doubt, captain Mo Salah.
Yeah,
he always tends to come up with a return. John, just the final question that came in: would you target any Palace assets? I know you touched on Gallagher, but would there be any other Palace assets that you might target for the next couple of game weeks?
There's this ongoing thing, and it's kind of a bit of a fun, but people are they're kind of reluctant to bring in Zaha, even when he gets a good run, and he always goes on a good run every year. The thing is, he'll go on a good run of maybe 3, 4, 5 games, and he look like unplayable, you know, and he'll be scoring goals, and then he kind of just disappears, you know. He wouldn't be seen as like a reliable FPL asset, but I will say, in previous years, he didn't have penalties. It was always Milijevic, I think, who took the penalties, and he was a brilliant penalty taker. I think one year he scored like something like 12 penalties. But now, obviously, Zaha has penalties. So I think he's not a bad shout. And once again, he's that kind of 6.9 million pound mark. I think he's a good shout at that mark. I mean, it would be he'd be a nice differential pick. But Gallagher, like for me, I think Gallagher's just like 5.7. He's kind of playing almost like a Frank Lampard role. He's really getting in on the end of into the box, on the end of things. He kind of spearheads every single one of their attacks. And like for that kind of a price, I think he's just brilliant. In the defense, just a bit of a shout. Like Kouyaté, he's playing out of position because he's playing centre defensive mid. He played centre back last year, but he's listed as a defender, just for people to be aware of. I don't think he's going to do much from centre defensive mid, but I suppose you could say he's playing out of position. I wouldn't really look anywhere further than that. I know that the former Celtic guy, what's his name? The striker. I know he came on and scored 2 goals, but he doesn't. Yes, but it doesn't. You just wouldn't be that sure if he's going to keep starting with Benteke there. I think if he did nail down a striker start or position, you know, he could be a shout. But I suppose we have to see more of that. It would be too much of a gamble now. And as FPL managers, we want, I suppose, a certainty of starts. But for me, it would be Gallagher. And if you're really looking for like a kind of a bit of a differential at 6.9, Zaha. But Gallagher, that kind of 5.7, just provides so much value for it. That's where I'd be going.
John, we might wrap it up there. So thanks so much for jumping on Wildcard Wednesday. We look forward to seeing how our teams compete and get on this weekend. And as we always say, may the best manager win. So thanks again, John, and hopefully we will have you on again throughout the season.
Brilliant. Listen, thanks. It's been a pleasure to be on, and thanks a million for having me. And I hope everyone has a great week. And I'm looking forward to see how we get on this weekend.